everybody, my name is Sally Cranham. I run Current Utilities and I work with full power utilities for all your commercial energy needs. And today I'm here with Sam Gottlieb-Hunt, who is my colleague at Full Power, and we work closely together helping small businesses to large commercial businesses. So thank you so much for having this chat today, Sam.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Sally. Good to see you face to face again. Yeah, looking forward to having a chat about things and digging into what's a very hot topic at the minute.
It really is. So tell me a little bit about yourself. How long have you been in the energy market? You've become really a bit of a commercial energy expert over the last 6 years, is it?
Yeah, so I've been in the industry for about 6 years. Started off... sort of fell into the industry, to be quite honest. Started off temping as just working customer service at an energy company, working on mostly domestic stuff for about 2 years. Then left there, wasn't really what I wanted to do long term, didn't really enjoy it too much, so I ended up moving over into, wanted to get into the more commercial side of things. Went and joined another energy brokerage, which I was at for about 6 months. Left for various reasons, but I enjoyed the role, and then moved to Full Power Utilities, which I have been at for, well, it was actually 4 years last month. So
brilliant.
Yeah, no, and all going well. And yeah, been in the industry a while now. Feels like it's absolutely flown by. Yeah, all going really well. I mean, been a challenging industry for the last, probably closer to a year, nine months now. But yeah, overall, all going well. Enjoying it. Enjoying the challenge, and enjoying trying to sort of find new solutions and new ways of working in what's a changing world and a changing industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is literally so much we could talk about today. And, you know, when it comes to the energy market, you've seen the last couple of years just been up and down and round and about. What do you think has been the most surprising thing in terms of you working with Full Power, and, you know, the response that Full Power have put towards the situation over the last, 6 months to a year at least?
I think the most surprising thing has to be the market. I think if you ask anybody, that's probably what they'll say. I think it surprised me, it surprised you, it surprised clients as well, in terms of what we've seen. I think in terms of that, this was something, in terms of the energy crisis that we're in at the minute, is something that we expected to see come and go within sort of 3 to 6 months. It was something that we thought was right. These are unusual circumstances that are driving this. It's going to be a bit of a flash in the pan, grin and bear it. Hopefully, there'll be a handful of people whose contracts are renewing, but it's hopefully a short window. Just bite the bullet, and we'll be out the other side of it relatively soon. Was what everybody was saying. Everybody in the market was looking at it that way. And we were sort of in a position where we were looking at people who were trying to sign people up at longer term contracts, going, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And now the market's changed, and things have only got worse when we were expecting to be out the other side of it now. And it's one of those things that's constantly changing, and it's a difficult one. I mean, in terms of our response and what I've been saying to clients and people that I've been speaking with, it's really varied, because there isn't really a one size fits all, because at the minute no one really knows what the future looks like. We like to think we have an idea, but we also like to think we haven't had an idea 6 months ago. So you've got to be careful not to be arrogant in the sense of thinking you know everything, because it's you're predicting a market, and if you wouldn't bet your house on it, you can't go in with that level of certainty when you're advising clients what to do. It's the way that I'm looking at it, and really it kind of comes down to what the client's priorities are, and where their focus is. I mean, if we're talking about just purely on fixed contracts, which is pretty much one of the only options for small businesses who are massively affected at the minute. If we're looking at shorter term contracts, they're a lot more expensive. The longer term contracts are still massively expensive, but not as much as the 1 year, for example, or shorter term. So, spoken to some clients who are, say, in restaurants or bar sector who have been massively affected from COVID, just come back and are like, right, we need to smash this year. We need to have a really good year of, turning a profit. And then energy crisis hits and they're already down from a cash flow standpoint, already sort of struggling to get things back off the ground after being pretty much shut for 2 years or on and off for 2 years. And then now like, well, from a cash flow perspective, I can't afford not to get the best rate possible. So if that means I'm tied in at a high rate for 3 years and the market falls in that time and I miss out on that opportunity, so be it, because I need that cash now. Whereas other businesses are like, well, it's not ideal, but I'm adamant the market's going to come down. I want to take that risk. And then there's other people who are going, don't want to sort of take a massive risk in either direction. They split the difference and go for something in the middle, which if it was me, I'd probably be leaning that way. It's a bit in the middle. Are you saying sort of 2-year contracts? Because there really seems to be this conversation going on between this long or short-term contracts, because people that took a short-term contract a year ago that needed to renew are now being faced with a much bigger increase than if they'd gone long-term back then, so it's a bit of a, as you say, it's where do you find the middle ground on that? And I'm speaking to a lot of people who, because we are coming to that point, I'm speaking to a lot of people who around sort of August, September time, did their renewals right when we were at the start of this. And the rates we were looking at were perceived to be massively high because people were looking at 30-40% increases, which is typically a lot, or was typically a lot. And now I'd bite your hand off for the rates that we were looking at for the renewals last year, because they're about half of what they are now, if not more in some cases. So it is a difficult one. It's a difficult one to predict. And
it's hard for small businesses, especially those in the hospitality sector, to project any kind of, sales, anything really, projecting costs for the next years. And I guess that's where Full Power can come in and really help manage expectations, but also really talk through the plan of, right, this is going to be our 1 year, 2 year plan with regards to utilities, and with Full Power being in the utility business 25 years now. I love what you said there. We know we don't know, and I think that's part of the integrity of Full Power and what you guys offer and what we offer, connecting small businesses, large businesses as well, is this sort of level of honesty and managing the expectations. Have you got any examples of stories of people that you've come across? I know there's some really bad stories out there, some really hard stories to hear, but have you got any good stories, hope-filled stories for small businesses that you've helped?
I've got one that I can think of, but it's a much larger business, but it's one that springs to mind. And I actually haven't spoken about using them as an example, so I won't name names. But it's a large pharmaceutical manufacturing company that I work with. They were faced with massive increases. We're looking at their renewals. So just to tell you what they did in terms of their contracts previously, they were one of the companies who had a renewal for a September start date last year, ended up renewing on a 3-month contract. It was a 6-month contract at the time, because they were of the belief that the market's going to recover in sort of 3 to 6 months time. So 6 months time, go for the upper end of that, be a little bit more conservative. Hopefully we'll be out the other side of it by then. See everything that's happened. They then came to me after that. Obviously I was involved partially at that point, but they had another broker who they worked with, renewed through them, kind of ran things by me, but wasn't really looking at things with us. And then my contact there's roles changed. She was a bit more involved in the decision, came to me and said, right, what do we do? And with larger businesses, we do have flexible options, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a fixed contract. They were looking at their renewal it was end of March, I believe. So it would have been right as everything was going on in Russia and Ukraine, that they needed to make their decision. So right as everything kicked off and the market spiked, this was for gas, and gas reached all-time highs. So we're talking 500-600 pence per therm in the short term, when gas as an average, for anybody who doesn't know, typically sits around 50 pence per therm in years gone by. So the market, it was quite literally 10 times where it usually sat at. They're in a position where they need to make a decision, and the rates that they were looking at compared with what we've achieved from this on their flex products, the worst case scenario in the months that we've achieved for them is half of what they would have been looking at on a fix. So we've had months where they've saved 3 times as much, and we've had months where they've saved half as much, but it's still far better than anything they were looking at on a fixed contract. And that's not to say the rates aren't still high, because they are, but it's just about looking at what the solutions are, trying to weigh up the risks, and about what's right in the market at that time, because sometimes you do get backed into a corner, and ultimately it's the thing with energy is it's a commodity, but it's one that you have to buy on a timeline. So any other commodity, you can look at this and go, well, it's a terrible time to buy this commodity. You know, the market's extremely high. If you were talking about investing in anything, gold, for example, you wouldn't buy it when it's at an all-time high, you buy it when it's low. But energy, you just don't have that luxury, because you're only tied in for a particular period. So that end date creeps in, and you have to do something. Otherwise, you're on out of contract rates, which 90% of the time are quite a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's something I've run into working with smaller businesses, is they actually don't know when their contract's coming up, and then they find themselves in a out of contract rate, and they're like, oh, I've had it's gone skyrocketed, and blame it on the big issues going on in the world. But actually, it was sort of a lack of paying attention to the contract end date. So in terms of smaller businesses, I mean, the large commercial businesses, they've got a few more options, but what about the smaller end of the market in terms of commercial properties, small business owners? What sort of pieces of advice are you giving them at this time?
It really depends, and it's something that we sort of take on a case by case basis, and it depends on what their priorities are as a business. So if they need any level of budget certainty, my advice is always fix your contracts when you need to know your budgets. Whether that is the best thing to do in terms of a price, you know, it's difficult to say, but if you need that cost certainty, a fixed contract is the only thing that's going to deliver you absolute certainty of cost. Anything other than that, you're taking a risk, and if you need to know solid budgets to plan for, then you need to be in a fixed contract. In terms of advice on what to do, again, it really is difficult to give. There isn't really a one size fits all. It depends on what their approach is. Like I said before, whether it's you know, they need the best price now, or they don't want to be tied in while the market's high. Whatever their priority is, you know, we'll look at the best option for that. And the other thing is look at energy saving wherever you can, because if your bills have doubled or are 250% more than what they were previously, you know, we're seeing some gas bills nearly triple. If you can reduce your energy, whatever you reduce is going to be 3 times as effective as what it would have been in the past. So it kind of works as a multiplier both ways. I know it's not ideal, and you don't want to have to do that. You want to just pay less for anything that we were using, but those the only two it's like anything, you look at what the variables are you can control. So to an extent, price is out of your control. What are the other variables you can control? Because they're the two things that affect your bill: is the unit rate that you pay and the amount of energy you use. And if the unit rate's out of control, the only other variable that is very much in your control is the amount of energy you use. So what you do, look at what you're doing there. We're partnered with a a solar panel company, so we make recommendations there. So, you know, if that's something that anybody's interested in, then, you know, we can provide solutions for solar panels if people want to invest in solar panels, but obviously that comes at an upfront cost. So it's, you know, it's just about weighing up the pros and cons for each business, whether that's something that's worth.
Yeah, it does seem that there's upfront costs for that, and there's a number of grants available as well. One of the clients I have with you guys, with Full Power, they have a large warehouse, and we're on the investigation trail of looking at the solar panels because it's in such a, you know, great location for that. But, you know, it's not going to happen overnight. It will be a process to get to that point. But ultimately, it seems long term, some of these renewable options could be the direction a lot of people choose to do as well.
And it makes good sense as well, because I think what this situation in the market has really shown is that you can't sort of predict the market, and that it can become very volatile. Even if it does level out now, there's still going to be this as an example of when the market went absolutely crazy and shot up so much higher than anyone could have expected that it would have. So you can't sort of bank on the fact that the market's always going to sit within a certain level, because this has just proved that that isn't the case. And I think up until now, myself included, everybody had been under the assumption that, well, it will sort of fall between here and here. So even if you get a bit of a, you know, it just so happens that you leave things a bit late for your renewal, okay, you'll pay a few £100s more a year. It's not the end of the world. Like, not ideal, but you can live with it. Whereas now it's business critical for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the work I do with Current Utilities, just as my own little consultancy, and just so people know, I work with Full Power. I introduce people. I'm sort of that middle woman. I help gather all the details we need, and then Sam and I work together on bringing some, you know, affordable but contracts that have really had a bit extra thought put into them, from Sam's expertise and experience in the industry. But one of the things that I sort of say to clients is this is really time to take back your power, to pay attention to those variables, to pay attention to what you can control. And you know, that's what we're here for. We're the faces versus phoning up a call center, and this is the things that we offer, a bit of much more personal, and people, I think, are needing that right now, because things have been so vulnerable for business owners. It's kind of a joy to be part of the process with people at this stage as well, and bring those extra bits of wisdom that especially you can, Sam, to the situations that people are in. So just to wrap up, I have a couple more questions. I don't know what are your top 3 tips, do you think, for people at this stage on this day? What are your top 3 tips?
I think the main thing is, the first thing I'd say is just make sure you're aware of where you are in terms of contracts. Just find out for your own sake and for your own, hopefully, peace of mind, that you are in a contract. Just find out where you are in terms of the contract. Just keep a record of that. If you renew it, keep a record of what you've done, so you don't have to go digging for it, so that when anything does pop up in the news, it sounds a bit scary, you can look at it and go, it's all right, I'm in a contract, or actually, no, I'm not in a contract, I need to look at this. And then you know where you're at with it. I think that will be the main thing, but as the initial one, because for a lot of people, they will be in contracts for a year. I mean, a lot of businesses do 3-year contracts. So we're seeing a lot of people, and the longer this goes on, the more people that are going to crop up that need renewing. But most people, hopefully, are in a contract. So just make yourself aware of where you are, so that when things do start coming around, you can, you know, make sure that you're aware and start looking at options. The other thing I would say, particularly in the market now, once you're aware of your contract end dates, I would say that make sure you start becoming aware of what your options are about 6 months out. I would say 3 to 6 months out. I wouldn't leave it any closer to your renewal date than that at the moment, just because of how volatile the market is. Because the number of instances I've seen where people are like, prices are so high, I don't want to do anything. I'm like, look, I understand that, but prices are extremely volatile, and people tend to have a view when things are bad that they can't get any worse, and we've just seen that isn't true. And I've had so many people put things off because rates are high, which they are anyway. But there's peaks and troughs in any market, so they don't want to renew when the market's in a trough. But then the market spikes, they're in a situation where they have to renew or go out of contract, and whichever way you want to spin it, they end up paying more because they either end up out of contract waiting for things to come down, or they end up having to renew at a higher rate. So yeah, I'd say start looking at your options, start being aware of what it's going to cost you 3 to 6 months out, so you can start budgeting, and don't leave it too close to your renewal date to make a decision.
Lovely.
And lastly, I'm a little bit biased, but I would say speak to a consultant. And the reason why I say that's more important now than ever, in usual circumstances, you could probably do an okay job by speaking to suppliers. But the number of people I've spoken to at the moment who have, I actually had someone about a week ago who was just going to renew with their current supplier, and they literally couldn't get their supplier on the end of the phone to do a renewal. And this was one of the big six. This is not a small supplier. They had prices, couldn't get refresh pricing, couldn't get anyone to pick up the phone, and literally couldn't renew with them. So we sorted them out a contract option. Also, what a lot of people don't realise is there's so much shift in the market at the minute that a lot of suppliers aren't taking certain types of business, have changed the areas of the business that they're working on. So Scottish Power, for example, again, one of the big six, now no longer deal with any I&C clients. They're now only dealing with SME business. We've got other businesses who've done the opposite, and there's just been so much shift. So, and we've even got some that just aren't pricing at all at the moment because of how volatile the market is. So you might find that you're looking for a renewal price and your supplier goes, yeah, we're not pricing at the minute, or you can't get pricing from them in a timely manner where you just pick up the phone and they give you a price there and then, like you might have done in years gone by. And also, the obvious suppliers may not be the best solution at the minute. We work with a lot of suppliers in the market who are either relatively new to the market or only work through third parties such as consultants, which you might not have you won't have direct access to as a direct customer, or you just might not know about them because they're relatively small, don't do big marketing campaigns, and we only know about them because we're in the industry and have visibility of the whole market.
So, just a note on that. I think people sometimes have got a little bit, especially in the residential market, some of the smaller companies going bust. We've seen a number of companies disappear. What's the difference within the commercial business sector when it comes to that? Because I think people have a red flag as soon as they hear it's a small company. What's your answer be to that?
It is something that you do have to be careful of, and I'm not saying it's the right thing to do for all businesses. Generally, it isn't my recommendation that you go with a small supplier if you can get it prices competitively with a larger supplier, because yes, they are more secure, and you are better off. But when we're looking at things like issues with credit, because unlike domestic, for a better business, they will credit check you. And the suppliers have become extremely risk averse at the moment, just with everything that's going on. And even things like new businesses, so many people are setting up new businesses at the minute, and so the big suppliers don't want to touch them for the most part. So your options are limited in that sense, whether it's because of who's pricing or because of credit. You might not have the luxury of being able to go, I want to be with Scottish Power or EDF, because they might turn around and go, well, we're not accepting your business type. Your credit might be fine, but we're not accepting anyone in your sector because we view it as a risk. And small suppliers aren't doing that. I mean, the other thing as well as to why commercial suppliers don't carry the same level of risk in some respects is because the price cap only applies on domestic. So with the price cap, I'm sure you've probably seen, and a lot of people have, Martin Lewis's advice up until recently was stay on the standard variable rates because they're much cheaper than any fixed contracts on domestic. That's because of the price cap, and the price cap for, well, since about August last year, even with it rising, has been lower than domestic fixed rate and lower than the wholesale price of energy.
Right.
So when the wholesale price of energy is up here, but suppliers have to sell it down here, if they haven't got deep pockets, they're making a loss, and on a long enough timeline, they're going to go under. From the figures I've seen so far, that is changing from October. Well, I know the price cap's changing from October, but from what I've seen in terms of where prices are now to where the new price cap takes us up to, I'm pretty sure it closes that gap, and it looks as though they will now be more expensive than fixed contracts, which is not ideal for domestic customers, but it's not sustainable to have suppliers operating at a loss. And when that happens, suppliers go bust, and then the other suppliers that are trading in the market have to pick up the have to foot the bill for some of the charges that aren't paid, without getting into sort of too much of the ins and outs of non-commodity charges. But unfortunately, that's how the industry works. So all these suppliers that are still trading have to foot the bill, and are almost penalised for the fact that they didn't go. They managed to weather the storm, which is not ideal, but the costs have got to be covered from somewhere.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. There are some real bonuses for people working with consultants like myself and Sam. And Full Power have been around 25 years. They are steeped in knowledge and wisdom within the market. They work with up to 50 commercial energy suppliers, but I know that really they're quite picky with those in the ones that they end up going with, small or larger, very picky and very paying attention to really what's going on in the market. And working with a consultant means, one, you'll never miss a contract, because we'll have your details and we'll know when things are coming up. And we're here to just take away that pressure, lighten the load of your portfolio, of your energy portfolio, whether you've got one commercial property or you're working with a large body of commercial properties. We're here to help, and it's been great speaking with you today, Sam. I look forward to having another conversation at some point. But for now, I'm Sally at currentutilities.co.uk, working with Full Power Utilities for all your commercial business energy needs. So we'll see you again. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. Bye.
Thanks, Sally. See you later.